on the off chance I blow up a conversation or like something like that, like it's just time you never get back with like that person, like and my thought is kind of like, if someone thinks of me and like reaches out, then it's like the least I can do is like answer the phone, and then trying to be more intentional about like, really like reaching out to people when I think of them too, because friends just randomly pop into your mind like throughout the day. And it's like,
yeah. Hi, welcome back to 5 Live Questions. I'm your host, Jen Shin. On today's episode, I'm joined by Matt Millington, who we saw recently recognized by Toby Egbuna. I'm doing the short personal intro today because I want to give everybody a little preview about some of the content that we talk about. Last year, Matt lost a few people in his life, a few key people in his life, and we end up talking about some of these questions through that lens of life lost and just being intentional with our time. I'm letting you know that just in case you've lost somebody recently. I didn't want for you to be in an overwhelmed emotional state by surprise as you watch this interview. Aside from that, Matt brings an incredible perspective on how he's trying to be more intentional in his day-to-day life and his routines. And I look forward to hearing your guys' response. So with that, we'll kick it over to the interview. How does this relationship, what's the start of it? And how do you guys know each other? Just tell us a little bit about Toby.
Yeah. So Tobes is one of my boys from college. We met through another friend that like was just in my major. He was like, on JV basketball team type thing. And like, I don't know, I was on the club soccer team at Carolina. So it was like my weird kind of like overlap with like, I only hung out with soccer guys until I met that group, and then I was like hanging out with like them. But yeah, no, Tobes has been like quite literally since I met him, just like one of my closest friends. Like I can remember, like, I don't know, like I go to him with like any type of advice with anything I need potentially. And he's kind of like also in a weird way, like someone to like look up to. I know it sounds like weird to say you like look up to your friends, but like Tobes just like has his stuff together, man. Like he just gets it, like smart dude. Like, I also think we kind of like, related as well, and like that kind of like first generation American kind of thing. Like I think it's just like I don't know how to describe it. You can't really put it into words, but they're really something you just like see eye to eye on, you know what I mean? Sure. But yeah, he's always been one of my best friends, and yeah, it's just a good dude through and through. And like I said, like just watching him and like what he's done, like with whether it's like with his business, like after he graduated and stuff like that, it was always just like, Toes is like the standard. So yeah, just a good dude all around.
Awesome. Thank you for that context. With that, yes, if you could go ahead and play the clip.
Matt, I honor you for your adaptability, your ability to be good in any hood, as some people like to say. You are a chameleon in the best way possible, and that is something I really admire, is that you can get along with just about anybody that you meet. And very few people will interact with you and say that they don't, that they don't like you. And that's it's a very admirable trait. I like the way that you do that, and you've just grown a lot as a person and as a friend, I think, over the last 5-6 years in a way that I really admire and respect and look up to. So yeah, Matt Millington, my guy, I honor you.
Dang. Wow. That's pretty crazy hearing from Toes.
Why is that? Yeah, just tell us your gut reaction.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like, I don't know. We don't really, like, I feel like as of late, we've done a much better job of like, being more like communicative in terms of like feelings and stuff like that. But I think like for a long time, it's just like, it's like we're friends, but like we don't really talk about anything, beyond kind of like that. Like I'm talking about feelings and everything like that. So even just hearing that from him, like, I mean, in its simplest form, we just like talk more shit than we get compliments, I should say.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, so it's just it's nice to hear. It's just like, I don't know, cool to hear from Tobes, because I feel the exact same way about him. Like, I don't know, like I said, I would die for Tobes. He's one of my best friends. Like I would bring him anywhere, like that type of thing. So it's just nice to hear, I should say.
Right on. You hear about adaptability specifically. Does that ring true to you? How does that speak to you?
Yeah, no, I thought that was interesting. I think it's not something I've ever thought about, to be completely honest. I feel like I'm just gonna like go with the flow. Yeah, so it's interesting. I'll have to think about it a little bit more.
Awesome. Right on. So then we'll dive right in to learn more about Matt Millington. And that first question is, where are you at in life today?
Okay, yeah, that's a tough one. I think I mean, with like lockdown and everything like that,
Yeah.
this answer's probably changed. Like, it's been pretty dynamic, I would say. But I would say like stuff that's pretty important to me, like half Guyanese, half Jamaican. Like dad immigrated from Guyana, mom immigrated from Jamaica. I think that like that kind of plays into some of the things I really care about. Whether I mean, I'm not gonna get super political or anything, but like immigration reform, stuff like that's obviously like near and dear to my heart. Um, but I think I like try to be I guess like mindset when I like go about like my day to day is kind of like being a good person even if like nobody's watching. And I think that, you know, at the end of the day, like like when my time comes and everything like that, like people just say like, yeah, Matt was a good person, and like I'm perfectly satisfied with that. But yeah, like I have my couple passions, which are like soccer. That's like my number one thing. Like I have my Chelsea is like my team. Like I'll always watch them. That's like a not necessarily a piece of my personality, but like I'm always watching soccer. Grew up playing it and everything like that, which kind of like led to competitiveness and like a lot of different things that like, you know, I still carry today.
Yeah.
I think that like, you know, being a first generation American, like there's a certain like family dynamic, like you just have so much family around all the time, whether it's for the
Mm.
holidays. Like I talk to my mom quite literally every single day, probably talk
Mm.
to my dad about like 3 to 4 times a week as well. It's just like family is very, very important to me, and I feel like an integral piece of like who I am. And I'm fortunate to have like a lot of family like in the DC area with me too. So
Nice.
we'll spend a lot of time with them too.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of like those sort of things, just nothing too
Nice.
great.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like that's a pretty timely question in terms of thinking about coming out of the pandemic, uh, thinking, yeah, kind of reflecting on where we want to be at in life. But it also sounds like a place where you're very present, like with family and hobbies and passions. So yeah, good for you.
Oh,
Right on.
thanks. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, trying to be more so as best as I can. You know, it's like
yeah.
I still mess up and like will scroll on TikTok for like 2 hours. You know what I mean?
Who doesn't? Who
Yeah,
doesn't? Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. Right on. All right. So then the next question is, what are your top three core values?
Oof, man, that's a tough one. So I think probably like empathy, curiosity, and passion. I don't know if that can technically be a value, but those are probably my biggest three, just in terms of like how I try to like go about my day to day.
Those definitely count. Those are great ones. Will you tell us about the significance of each one? Just kind of,
Yeah.
riffing,
Um,
thinking out loud.
yeah. So I think with empathy, like that one in particular, I feel like has kind of like helped me win like friendships, relationships, like with family members, that type of thing. And just like kind of like helps with like difficult conversations too. So I remember like in college, I did like a couple different like diversity and inclusion programs and some other like kind of like leadership programs, like uplifting programs, that type of thing. And I think like empathy was like the key to it all, in the sense of like being able to like, you know, not try to like relate to where someone's coming from, but just like kind of like have the understanding that, you know, everyone around you has their own story and like has their own things that like they face. And like I guess that kind of ties into the curiosity, which is like kind of like wanting to get to know those things about people too. And like, you know, truly caring. And I think that like, you know, everyone's background, everyone's like where like story, I should say, is just so much different than one another. And I think that, you know, you hear this all the time in the sense of like people that are like, oh, like, you know, we're living in a simulation. There's no way all these people are real. But it's just so hard to imagine that every person that you see is like, you know, has their own like unique story and comes from such a
Yeah.
unique place. And like I said, so many experiences, some similar to yours, some different.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think those two are like tied together in a way. The curiosity, I would take it a step further to say like trying to learn as much as possible is like my biggest thing. Like I feel like I'm pretty much constantly trying to like access new information. I think in a way it can be bad because it's like a dog chasing cars sometimes, where I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And then I like am obsessed with it for like a month. And then I'm like, all right, I'm bored with this and move on to the next thing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And then passion would just be kind of like, I don't know. I find myself when I've really like taken a hard look in the mirror, especially like recently, I've realized that I'm a, you know, pretty emotional person when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
And like, kind of like let that drive like myself sometimes. And I think the other piece is that like the stuff that I do, like the jobs that I try to get, like that type of stuff is usually falls in the realm of like stuff that I actually like care about. And I try to like stay within that realm as best as I can. I don't know how much longer it'll, be that way because it doesn't necessarily always pay the best, but and as long term as I can think, I like do see myself like trying to do things that I like care about, like spending time with the people I care about, and like that sort of thing.
Yeah, right on. That's I mean, there are things that I kind of want to double click on, but that's just such a good segue as you talk about time, and you thinking more critically about that and where you're at in life today. Where are your fears at in life today?
Yeah, that one's pretty timely too, I would say. So I mean, this year has been like pretty rough, I would say, like pretty long, just in terms of like this question in particular. So I had a uncle pass away in February of this year, and then like my his father, has been like in and out of the hospital for about the past like 4 or 5 months or so. So it's been pretty like tricky like navigating that, and I think that like it kind of like elucidated a lot of the kind of like fears that I have. Kind of like this weird realization that the only thing that we're all like really guaranteed, not in like a really dark way or anything like that, but the only guarantee that we have is that at some point we're all going to die. And I think that's
Yes, sir.
it's a little bit like scary to think about because it's like the
Yeah.
one thing we're always trying to avoid, but it's like the only certainty.
Yeah.
And I think that, not in the sense of like I'm scared of dying or anything like that, but
Yeah.
like I think I'm in this place now where I'm like actually extremely scared of like losing people that I care about. It's like I don't know how to describe it exactly. I don't think there's ever a way to be ready for it or a way to like prepare yourself for it. But I'm just like, terrified of losing loved ones, whether it's friends, family, like anything like that. Like I'm just like, whether it's like the impact that it has on like, even if it's not like my family, like the impact that it has on people that I care about. It's just like, it's like I said, the one thing that's certain, but the one thing that's always devastating no matter what.
Yeah. Have you noticed that change your behaviors at all or your decisions?
Yeah, it definitely has. In the sense of like, I feel like before like my uncle passed and everything, like I mean, I'm notoriously bad at like responding to stuff and stuff like that. Like I'm inviting someone, I'll show up, I'll like confirm them showing up, that type of thing. But like terrible, like text back grabbing those like one-off, like just random conversations.
Yeah.
But I find myself now, like, if my phone rings, like, there's like a 95% chance I'm gonna answer it, and like the percent is like if I'm like in a meeting where I'm like presenting something and like can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that like just kind of like the intentionality like skyrocketed for me, especially with like family members, stuff like that. I'm trying to do better with like friends too. It's just like it's I feel bad sometimes. So there are some days where it's like I'm just always on the phone and if I'm like hanging out with someone or something like that, and it's just like but it's like my mom calls and I have to like talk to her, and and if my dad calls, that's like that can go on for who even knows how long. Same thing with my brother. So but yeah, so I think it just like increased like just intentionality. One of the other things that I like love doing is like cooking and also like going out to eat, that sort of stuff. Like food is really important to my like family, culture, everything. Also bringing people into that space, I think, has been like a big thing too. So yeah, it's fun.
Very cool. Very cool. My brain jumped when you kind of talked about, making time for people. My brain jumps to something that I had a very hard time with, I think like immediately coming out of college. For my own mentals, like being able to say no. Do you find that that's something that you struggle with in a way that like is draining, or is it something that you can kind of relate to, but in a way that's like the challenge is still something that is something that you embrace more positively?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like I am constantly like going back and forth, in the sense of like on the one hand, like there are days when you're just like drained, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just been a long day, and it's like the last thing you want to do is like pick up the phone and call somebody. But then like I said, like if the phone rings, like I really am gonna answer it. So I think that's sometimes like that when you're trying to like recharge can be a little challenging. But then I find myself also, I'm trying to think of who it was, but I was listening to this podcast and they were kind of talking. It was an interview with a like terminal cancer patient,
Mm.
And they were kind of talking about like the moments that you never get back.
Mm.
And that's something that I've been like kind of like playing around with a little bit too, like just like internally, just like thinking about like, you know, it on the off chance I blow up a conversation or like something like that, like it's just time you never get back with like that person, you know, and like
Mm-hmm.
and my thought is kind of like, you know, if someone thinks of me and like reaches out, then it's like the least I can do is like answer the phone, and then
Mm.
trying to be more intentional about like, you know, really like reaching out to people when I think of them too, because you know, friends just randomly pop into your mind like throughout the day, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Good for you. And thank you for being
It's
that
it's an
friend.
ongoing battle, man. It's
Yeah.
definitely not perfect, but trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Um, we all benefit from somebody like a Matt in our lives, and I'm thinking about who that is for me. Uh, and you know, in part, that's kind of what I hope that this series does for people. But I'm thinking about my boy Bruce, and he just picks up the phone, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like he picks up the phone, like even if he's like at a dinner. I think he's no, he texted me while he was in a movie. Uh,
Oh
but
wow.
yeah, but even when he picks up, like, or whatever it is he's doing, he'll like give me that even 60 seconds just to be like, hey, you good? And then he'll be like, okay, I'm in the middle of something, so like I'll
Yeah,
call you
yeah.
later, you know. But like just the fact that he's always picking up the phone, I am better for. So uh whoever you are met for the people in your communities, I'm sure they are very grateful, and good on you, man. That's
Huh.
awesome.
Yeah, trying my best, man. But yeah, no, it's cool. I'm glad you have someone like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I like that question because, yes, it speaks to the fact that we're all going through something.
Yeah.
Uh, but on the flip side of that, when it comes to our successes in life, we're also not all that we appear to be. Right.
Okay, that's fair.
So that next question then is, what is something that you have accomplished in life, or something you have achieved that is pretty private or not a lot of people know about? That's just like, nah, but this is me too.
Oh yeah. So this one's kind of like, I guess, not just me, it's like my family as well. But we have like a food trailer that we have at the State Fair in North
Okay.
Carolina. Um,
Yeah.
and we like yeah, so it's like Caribbean food, like very very authentic. My parents like
Yeah.
everything from scratch. It's like it's pretty. It's but can't say so. It's actually really really good.
Yeah.
But we've been in like the top like 5 to 10 like places to eat like at the fair for like the past however many years. So my parents have been at the fair for like 22 years. Yeah, I was talking to my mom. We were like closing up, and I was just like think back to like I don't even know like 10, 15 years ago, and like we like people weren't really interested in like Caribbean food. Like we couldn't really get people to like stop by and like eat our stuff, and like now we have like a you know it's we're so fortunate because like we have like this nonstop line like people that have been coming to us for like years, and like news stations will come by and stuff like that, and it's kind of like a
Yes.
I don't know, it's just like a cool thing. I'm just like, you know, happy to see my parents doing so well, and like happy to help out. And like this year I actually like cooked and like helped out with like a dish. Usually I just throw out the ideas and my dad like executes. I actually like helped out with the cooking a little bit and like did some cooking on my own, which like we're like using and stuff. So, but yeah, it's just like a cool thing that we have going on. I think it's like the I guess secret accomplishment piece of it is that like for the past like couple years, I think this year we came in second, unfortunately, but we've had like the best food of the fair or like
Yeah.
best food try at the fair.
Yeah.
So it's been yeah, so it's been a cool journey, like especially seeing like how far my parents have come with everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny how food becomes a vessel that we communicate through. So my parents, yeah, moved over from Korea, um, and we would have this basically like our own elementary school's version of a fair,
Okay.
and it's just all the families of the school come by uh, for community building, community engagement, and I remember stories about my mom still talks about how she can say it with a laugh now, but how nervous she was thinking about how to be able to contribute to community when like she doesn't even speak English.
Right. Okay.
What she chose to do was to have like a booth where people could get Korean food. and it was like Korean beef and then a couple other side dishes. And at first, people didn't really know what to expect. And then her booth sold out. And every year, her booth would be like one of the first ones to sell out.
That's awesome.
And it's cool to hear like your experience as well of how food becomes this way that that we are able to communicate and try each other's cultures in a in a very like loving way. Right? There's a lot of intentionality in food, of course. It's really cool to hear your experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you sharing that as well. I think that's, really, really like, obviously it's challenging and everything like that, but I think it's really cool, like the way that it turned out and everything.
Going back to what you were talking about in the North Carolina State Fair. Yeah, what's the role that like you typically play? You've kind of hinted at it, but like, are you guys coming up with new recipes every year, and you're kind of helping that? Are you chefing more? Like,
Yeah, so it's kind of been all over the place. So I think so when I was like probably, I mean, throughout college and stuff like that, like my parents didn't really let us help too much like when we were like younger. But then like
Sure.
once they had like 16 or so, I was able to like help out.
Okay.
And I was just like serving people, that type of thing.
Yeah.
When I got to college, got like a little bit more into food, like started, learning how to cook, that type of thing.
Yeah.
They then were like would like ask about like certain things, like ask how things tasted, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I think the first time so they have like a like little competition at the beginning of the fair each year for like a new food.
Yeah.
I think the first time that my family like won it was my older brother came up with an idea to like make this like mango salsa and like have it with like it's like a jerk pork like wrap. And it was just like, for me, it was just like cutting up the vegetables and stuff like that. So my dad could like make the salsa, nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, like I was like, hey, like I feel like sliders are like the in thing right now. Maybe you guys could do some like barbecue sliders with like a coleslaw.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, like I just came up with the idea, and my dad would like execute. And then he like knocked that one out.
Nice.
And then this year, like our new food was like it's like a mac and cheese with like pulled pork. And like so, I'm making the mac and cheese, and my dad does like the pulled pork. We like we'll season the pork together and stuff, or like make the mac and cheese together. But it's been cool.
Yeah.
So the role kind of evolved, I would say.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it's there's no better tradition to come back to than one in which your role continues to grow.
Yeah, that's true. Well said. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I got to think about some of the traditions I've got in my life and think about how that role exploration is being fostered and explored. That's really cool.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next question then. Talking fears, talking accomplishments. We've gotten to cover a cool spectrum there. And this next question is, if you have any advice, words of wisdom, words you live by. It could be a quote that you like. Impart some knowledge on us, Matt.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. I'll start this off with saying I don't think I'm very wise. I just try to, read about other people that, were wise and like kind of steal some of their ideas over time.
I like that.
But, hopefully that's one day we'll get there, I guess. But I have a couple of them, if that's all right. I think I have like 3.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, if that's cool.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so the first one, pretty straightforward. Everyone's probably heard it, but like, it's like que sera, sera. So like, what will be, will be. And then kind of like tied into that one, I think I found the second one first actually, and then heard that one afterwards. But it's in Latin, but it's like I actually won't pronounce the Latin version of it because we'll probably butcher it. But it translates to fate leads the willing, but drags the unwilling. Kind of like there are moments in life when like things get challenging. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it kind of ties into like what everyone says with like trust the process in terms of like like. There are bad days, there are good days and bad days. And like, at the end of the day, you just gotta keep moving forward, like any type of like progress. You're not looking for perfection, but like, progress is good enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, it's also just like a constant reminder to just like keep moving. You know what I mean? Like no matter how bad a day is, no matter how like you're feeling, and especially like for myself, who like, I can, I won't go too far in detail, but like dealt with some like mental health stuff in the past, and like like it's just a constant reminder to myself. And then the last piece is something that my uncle that passed, like he used to say, and like he signed off his emails with it, which was like lead. It was sorry, lead. Sorry, I'm butchering this one. It's
Good.
life with purpose and always lead with your heart. And that was like it's just like another like reminder of like how I try to live, and like how I was talking about earlier about like the emotional side of myself and that type of thing. I feel like something you said earlier really resonated with me in terms of like you were talking about like the people you have in your life. I think it was like the third example you gave, and that was like my uncle to the T. Of,
Yeah.
and I feel like him having that saying and like kind of carrying it with him was pretty indicative of who he was, I should say.
Yeah, that's very cool. For context, for context, that third category that Matt's talking about is the people in our lives that are our heart healers. They're the people that can sit with us when we reflect and ask us good questions. That's really what they come down to, and we're grateful for them and grateful to have them. To your second point, fate leads the willing but drags the unwilling. Something that I talked about with somebody this morning was there are times when we can feel alone in life, not in solitude. I think solitude is something that can be very intentional, but something that is more like more isolated. And when you find yourself there, you can still make a choice. That choice is typically what gives you meaning, what gives you purpose, and what to participate in, or what to rest in. So for me, very timely that you bring this up, and I like what you say about, fate leads the willing, but drags the unwilling. And a gentle reminder to that is that you're not chasing perfection, just process.
Yeah, 100%.
That's really great. Live life with purpose and lead with your heart. There's a theme that's been coming up in all of your answers that I'm going to hold off on.
Okay.
We'll circle back to on the last question. Curious to see if it'll come back up. Okay. Here we are now at the last question. This is question 5. This is my favorite question. What is the best compliment that somebody could give you?
Oof, man. Yeah, so I'll start us off by saying I am terrible at receiving compliments. It's like the one thing I feel like my therapist is exhausted with this, like trying to get this one across to me.
Yeah.
But I've always been so bad at compliments. All right. Well, yeah. All right. I think I got this one. It's just a matter of putting it into words.
Yeah. It's tough. Yeah.
But I think so. It's a great final question, honestly, because it kind of ties it all together.
Yeah.
Kind of like what I was talking about earlier with like, recognizing that I'm like a pretty emotional person, like that type of thing.
Yeah.
I, of course, not through my own realization at all, but like, through multiple therapists and hours of therapy. But, I've come to the realization that like, sometimes like being an empathetic person can like cause you to like take on a lot. So I think that like if I had someone say, like be able to like recognize that, but also be like, like your like demeanor, like through all of that is like still, positive and like welcoming, or like, kind of like, just just genuinely like, just if I'm able to like bring joy to others, and kind of like be recognized as hopefully a good person, good friend, like throughout that, that would probably be it. Sometimes, like, to be completely honest, like I think I can get into these like zones where like you can just, I don't know, I think everyone probably does it, like falls into those wells of like, there's so many problems in the world and you just like, get so sucked into it. And like, for me, like there's so many issues that I'm like passionate about. It's like you just feel it, you know what I mean? Like, and it feels bad sometimes. And you're just like, sometimes you're really sitting here like, I just don't understand like how this is something that we're, still going back and forth on, like whether it's whatever issue it may be. But I think that like, finding like not only purpose within that, but also finding joy in that is like important which is convoluted, but yeah. But I don't know. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of like word vomiting there for a second.
It is awesome. What I'm thinking is kind of where you went was when we can feel like we're the bottom of a well. Is that what you said? Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What I wrote as you were saying that was said that your demeanor was uplifting as a listener. And as I wrote the word uplifting, you said like when people are at the like something along those lines, and I was just like, yeah, that's neat. I don't know, does that resonate when you hear that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that like, uh, well, I have one friend in particular that's always like, it just sounds bad. And I don't think it's like meant in a bad way at all. But he's like, you're always like picking up strays. And what he means is like, it's just like, I don't know. I just meet people in like really random ways. I'm just like, yeah. And I think that like, if it's like this small thing, big thing, just hope to like leave a positive impact at the end of the day. And it's like that. I'm sure I think it was actually, I probably got this from Twitter to be completely honest, but it was like this story of like some kid that was like throwing starfish back into like the ocean or something like that after like a high tide. And some dude like walks up to him and it's like, like even if like there's no way you can throw like all the starfish, like you're not going to like impact all these people. And then like the kid throws another one and it's like, well, I impacted that one. And like, yeah, and I think the guy like ends up like helping him like throw the starfish back into the ocean and stuff like that. But that one really resonated with me. And then there's one other one, and I'm sorry for pontificating, but it's like, so random movie. I don't know if you've ever seen. Have you ever seen Cloud Atlas?
I have not. No.
Okay, it's. I'm not gonna say it's bad, but it's just like different. You know what I mean? I think it's worth a watch, but like it's just different. But there's this one quote in it that like again really resonated with me, where like I guess like bad guy in the movie was like, "You're nothing but a drop in the ocean," and then like protagonist like turns to him and says, "But what is an ocean if not a multitude of drops?" It kind of like ties those two together, but that's just like how I try to approach my day to day.
Beautiful. The things that stood out to me in where you are presently in life is very much this exploration of lead with your heart. And I see that in how you're trying to keep playing a bigger role at the state fair. I see that in how you keep coming back to curiosity. There are many ways to be curious. And, some people go pursue PhDs. Some people, they specialize in certain subjects. And for you, it's with people. That seems to be the space where, you get to wear your heart and lead with it the most naturally. And that is cool, man.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm sure that, like my friends and stuff can attest that it hasn't always been, sunshine and roses, like there are, of course, like on the flip side of it, it's like, I feel like sometimes it's like an exposed nerve almost, you know what I mean? Where it's like you get your feelings hurt and then you're just like mad, you know what I mean? And like that's something that I've like really tried to like, I'm still trying to like, get out of that because it's like I guess it's just like assuming best intentions is probably like how I should describe it now. But I think that like, kind of trying to, escape that mindset and like get into like what you're describing. Hopefully I will, be able to achieve what you're describing in the foreseeable future. But yeah, so it's on the way there, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, I would just repeat what you said about trusting the process, and I'm sure you're closer than you think. So yeah. All right, Matt. Thank you for sharing your story. That was awesome. We have arrived at the point where I'll ask you to honor somebody, and yeah. Do you know who you want to honor today?
I I think so. Yeah, it's a tough one because I'm so fortunate to have like a lot of really great people around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that there's this. Yeah, I think I have someone.
Yeah, and who is that person? And just kind of set the stage a little bit. Who is this? Much like you did with Toby, give us a little context. Yeah.
Yeah. So he and I started off.
What's his
We
name?
were sorry. Oh,
What's his
sorry.
name?
His name is Eric Rossage.
Okay.
But we grew up like both from North Carolina. He's from like the Charlotte area. We basically have played on essentially like rival teams like growing up. Then we had this like random like college showcase, and we played on the same team and just like hit it off. You know what I mean? Like became like buddies. Like nothing too crazy. I think we were like 15, 16 at the time. Um, and then every time we would like play each other's teams, like after that, you know what I mean? Like after the game, like on the field, enemies, but like after the game, we stop and talk to each other, like that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So then I'm at Carolina my first year. One of my friends I was just like, oh man, like I'm really gonna miss soccer. One of my friends was like, you should try for this club team. So I ended up going out for it, and then ran into Eric at the tryouts. And we both like were fortunate enough to like make the team and everything. And then from there, friendship just kind of grew. Definitely
Yeah.
like some like, rocky moments, so throughout like college and everything like that. We had like for a while just like differing like in its simplest form like political ideologies on things. I think that like caused butt heads.
Sure.
But then I think that like after graduating, like we both like had like unique experiences and stuff like that, and like really come back together. Like he lives in Seattle, unfortunately, so I don't get to see him as frequently as I would like to. But he now coaches like women's soccer, works with the Seattle Reign a little bit. I think he's like actually I shouldn't say a little bit. Sorry, that is underplaying it for sure. He's like an assistant coach there.
Okay. Yeah. That's coaching. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool to see because he's just been a fan of like he's always like loved soccer and has really like pointed his life in the direction to like stay close to it. But I think like he has like the way he's gone about things has just been so like dynamic. Like I think that like like new experiences like really like opened his eyes. Not that like he was like super wrong or anything like beforehand. It's like not that I was right at all. But I think like I've been able to learn from him, and I hope vice versa. I'm not positive about that one. But like he is just a good dude, like through and through, like just probably the most genuine person like I've ever met, like just a nice guy, and just loves what he does and like will always do what he loves. I think, and I think he's just a good guy all the way through.
When you see the camera go, it's all
right. Sounds good. Eric, I honor you for your genuineness and authenticity. And your ability to always be striving for ways to do things that you love with the people you love. I think that you are, as you know, one of my closest friends. People 100% like aspire to be like you. I think that I really think back to like times we had in college, whether it be times when we would go out to your parents' house in Charlotte, or like times we'd have like around Chapel Hill, whether it's playing soccer. Visiting Seattle and just like going out to the fields and juggling for hours, like you just find a way of like always making people feel at home. And I'm sure that's not just for me. I'm sure that anyone that's met you can attest to that. And you've just always been one of my closest friends. And I think that we, whether it's us going out and like eating 10,000 pounds of sushi or staying up till like 3 a.m. talking for literally no reason, I think that like a lot of my growth can be attributed to like you. And it's just been, you are one of my favorite people, as you know, and yeah, I think you are doing phenomenal what you do, and I just really appreciate the way that you always go about life with like, it's hard on your sleeve, and that's the way you go.
Thanks again to Matt Millington for sharing your story with us today. I really enjoyed getting to speak with Matt. What impressed me was Matt is someone who clearly feels very deeply and thinks exhaustively. And yet, it felt to me like it was easy to relate to Matt. Just listen and project some of the feelings that he talked about over my life. For me personally, there were a couple of instances where hearing his perspective made me feel more seen. The first thing was when Matt talked about being kids of first-generation Americans. Yes, It was nice to be reminded about the power that food has, but really it just made me have a greater appreciation for my parents for some of the challenges that they've had to go through that I otherwise have not. The second thing, I really loved the illustration with starfish. Since starting this podcast, I've talked with other people who have wanted to start podcasting for themselves. And what I've told them is, for me, trying to put out these episodes and they've got 10, 20 views. But sometimes you can get frozen, paralyzed by the gap between what you don't know and what you want success to be. What I've tried to share is, the world doesn't change overnight. You just try to make it a little bit better, one person at a time. And then eventually you get to look back and see a world that has changed because of some way you tried to serve it. So yeah, I'll take that Twitter comic strip that Matt was referencing and just use it as fuel to just keep going. That's it for today's episode. I'd love to know what stood out to you. If there was any part of our conversation that resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I look forward to sharing an awesome conversation that I got to have with Eric Rosich next week. Thanks for watching, and remember, there's never a bad time to reconnect with someone you've been meaning to reach out to. All right, see you guys in the next one.